Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got quite a stack of Azure updates to get through this week, covering September 15th right up to the 19th, 2025.
Yeah, it's a packed one.
Definitely. So if you're managing compute, storage, or security in Azure, you'll want to stick around. It was a really heavy week, lots of GA announcements. Containers and confidential computing really dominated.
They really did. And our job today, as always, is to kind of filter through all this for you. We want to focus on what actually impacts your plans, right now or very soon.
So the GAs you need to maybe start adopting.
Exactly. And the previews that show where things are heading, plus those mandatory retirements you just can't ignore. The big themes: Kubernetes governance got a lot of attention, and like you said, a major push on confidential computing.
Okay, let's dive into AKS first. Azure Kubernetes Service. That's where a lot of the action was. It looks like they're hitting two main points: making things faster and making them easier to manage.
Yeah, the performance one is pretty staggering, actually. Azure Container Storage, or AC Store, is now GA with version 2.0.0.
Okay, V2.0.0.
And this isn't just a small bump. They're talking about up to 7 times higher IOPS and 4 times lower latency on local NVMe storage compared to the last version.
Yeah, 7 times.
Yeah.
That's a massive jump.
It really is. It could fundamentally change how you think about running stateful workloads, especially high-performance ones, directly in AKS.
Right. So if you're running, say, databases or maybe AI training jobs in containers, this could mean you don't need those complex, expensive external storage solutions anymore.
Potentially, yeah. And the kicker, it's open source, no extra service fees attached.
That's huge from a cost perspective. It really lowers the barrier for containerizing those IO-heavy applications.
Absolutely. But, speed isn't everything if it's a nightmare to manage.
Sure.
And that's where the other GA comes in, AKS Automatic. This is all about reducing that operational complexity, lowering the steep learning curve that Kubernetes often has.
AKS Automatic. Sounds good on paper, but does automatic mean less control? If you're someone who's already deep into Kubernetes, what are you potentially giving up here?
That's a fair question. The idea isn't really to take away control over the important stuff. It's more about automating the routine day-to-day tasks, patching, scaling, the kind of undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Okay, so it handles the toil.
Right. It frees up the experts to focus on the application architecture, on governance, which actually brings us nicely to the Fleet Manager updates.
Yeah, good segue. But just before we hit governance, let's quickly touch on monitoring. A couple updates there too. First, high-scale mode for Azure Monitor Container Insights is GA now.
Which means better log throughput. Finally keeping up at the scale of clusters people are actually running.
Exactly. And the other one, Managed Prometheus.
Ah, yes. In preview, they're adding native Grafana dashboards right inside the Azure portal. No extra cost.
Simplifying things again, fewer separate tools to juggle.
Precisely. Making that cloud-native observability stack a bit less fragmented.
Okay, now governance. Fleet Manager got 2 interesting preview updates, both focused on controlling updates more carefully. First one is about setting a target Kubernetes version.
Yeah, this is about predictability. You can basically designate a target minor version for your fleet. Once clusters hit that version, they'll only get patch updates automatically.
Ah, so no unexpected minor version jumps causing chaos in production.
Exactly. It locks them onto that minor version until it nears end of life. Much safer for stability.
And for even more control, approval gates.
Right. Also, in preview for Fleet Manager update runs, you can insert manual or automatic approval steps gates before or after different stages of an update rollout.
Which is critical for anyone in, say, finance or healthcare, right? Where you need that documented sign-off before touching production.
Absolutely. It brings a more structured, almost CI/CD-like governance model to cluster infrastructure updates. And that structured control flows nicely into our next big theme, security. We're seeing Azure consolidate tools, but also push hard into protecting data while it's being used.
Right. The consolidation piece seems centered on network security. Azure Firewall Manager is gone, sort of. It's been rebranded and expanded into the Network Security Hub.
Yeah, basically pulling Azure Firewall, WAF, and DDoS protection under one roof. One central place to manage those core network defenses.
Makes sense for simplifying management, especially in larger organizations. But does centralizing like that create new risks? Like if someone gets access to the hub, they control everything.
Well, that's where your RBAC, your role-based access control, becomes absolutely critical. You need careful planning to make sure the right people have the right permissions. Streamlining config is good, but you don't want to create a single point of failure or compromise. It's powerful, but needs careful handling.
Good point. Okay, moving down the stack to Application Gateway v2. Two GAs there focused on connections. First, dedicated connections to backends.
Yeah, it's about optimizing how TCP connections are used. Better resource efficiency, always welcome.
And the second one sounds more fundamental. Customer-controlled backend TLS validation is now GA.
This is really important for trust. It means you, the customer, are fully in charge of validating the certificates of your backend services when using HTTPS. No ambiguity about who trusts whom in that connection chain.
Okay, now the big one. Confidential computing. Using those hardware-based trusted execution environments, TEEs. This seems to be moving fast from niche to mainstream.
It really is. The GA of those DKK V6 series VMs, the AMD-based ones using 4th-gen processors, is a big signal.
And they're popping up in more regions too, right? UAE North, Korea Central, West Central, US.
Exactly. The availability excuse is getting harder to make if you've been holding back on adopting confidential VMs.
But the really groundbreaking part is bringing this to databases. Confidential computing support is now GA for Azure Database for PostgreSQL Flexible Server.
This is huge. Think about highly sensitive data finance healthcare. The T encrypts the data not just on disk or over the wire, but while it's being processed in memory.
So even a privileged admin or the cloud provider themselves can't peek at the live data.
That's the promise. That level of assurance could be a game changer for moving extremely sensitive database workloads into the public cloud. It addresses a core concern many organizations still have.
All right, let's shift gears a bit towards developers and more specialized compute. What's new for them?
Okay, for the serverless folks using Azure Functions, there's a public preview for .NET 10 support.
.NET 10 already. Time flies.
Doesn't it? The key thing is you need to update your Worker SDK reference to v2.0.5 or later to use it. Just a heads up for developers wanting to stay on the latest framework.
Good to know. And for durable functions, that stateful workflow engine.
Distributed tracing v2 is now GA. This is all about making it easier to follow operations across complex orchestrations, activities, entities, debugging those long-running multi-step processes.
Oh, yeah. I can remember spending ages trying to correlate logs across different function executions. This sounds like it could save a lot of headaches, hopefully.
Then, moving over to data analytics and AI, there's a public preview of something called Databricks. One within Azure Databricks.
Databricks 1, what's the idea there?
It's aiming for a unified experience, bringing data engineering, analytics, AI development together into one platform with unified governance. Trying to reduce the friction when different teams or roles work on the same data.
Makes sense. Less siloed workflows.
Exactly. And then for the really compute-intensive stuff, HPC, high-performance computing.
Right, the supercomputing crowd.
There's a public preview of the Azure HBV5 series VMs, specifically in the South Central U.S. region for now. These are tuned for memory bandwidth, the computational fluid dynamics, aerospace simulations, complex weather modeling, that kind of workload.
Niche, but critical for certain scientific and engineering fields.
Definitely. And just quickly rounding out this section, some global reach and pricing news. Azure DataBox Next Gen, those big physical data transfer appliances are GA in more places. India, Qatar, South Africa, Korea.
Expanding the footprint.
And maybe more impactful for some listeners, especially in Europe. At-cost data transfer is now offered for transfers between Azure and external endpoints over the internet.
At cost, so significantly cheaper egress.
That's the implication. It's a big policy shift that could really affect costs and how you architect solutions, especially hybrid ones, in Europe.
Okay, speaking of architecture and future plans, we also need to talk about the things going away. Retirements and licensing changes that need your attention, maybe urgently.
Yeah, these are the non-negotiables. Let's start with the big licensing one, impacting Azure VMware Solution, AVS.
Right, related to the Broadcom changes.
Exactly. Starting October 16th, 2025. So pretty soon, new AVS customers have to bring their own portable VCF subscriptions, VMware Cloud Foundation licenses.
So no more buying it all integrated through Azure for new deployments.
Correct. If you're an existing AVS customer, you can continue under your current terms for now. But if you're planning a new AVS setup, this completely changes the economics. You need to factor this into your budgeting and planning now.
That's a major heads up for anyone considering AVS. Okay, what else is retiring?
For AKS admins, Azure Linux 2.0 on AKS is retiring November 30th, 2025.
November next year.
Right. The transition to Azure Linux 3.0 is mandatory. You need to check your container images are compatible and plan that migration.
Got it. Another deadline for the calendar?
And for anyone who was using the preview of AKS on VMware, that's retiring March 16th, 2026.
Okay, AKS on VMware Preview is going away. What's the replacement path?
The recommendation is to transition to AKS on Azure Stack HCI or AKS on Windows Server, which fall under the Azure Arc umbrella, basically bringing AKS to your local infrastructure. It's likely not a simple lift and shift, so requires planning.
Right, potential architectural changes there. What about the data side?
Azure Databricks standard tier is being phased out. You won't be able to create new standard tier workspaces after April 1st, 2026, and the whole tier retires completely on October 1st, 2026.
So if you're on standard tier, you need to plan a move to premium or enterprise.
You do. You need to migrate before October 2026 to maintain support and functionality.
Okay. And one more, looking further out, but it's security critical.
Yes. Azure Key Vault support for HSM Platform 1 keys is retiring September 15th, 2028.
2028 seems far away.
It does, but migrating cryptographic keys, especially from hardware security modules, is often a complex, sensitive process, particularly in regulated industries. You really need that lead time to plan and execute the transition to newer supported key types or HSM platforms.
Right.
It's not something to leave until the last minute. It's fundamental security hygiene. #outro.
Wow, okay. That was definitely a dense week of updates to unpack. The big themes really stand out, though. Huge focus on containers. That AC Store V2 performance is frankly incredible, and the Fleet Manager governance controls look really useful.
Yeah, real maturity happening in the AKS ecosystem.
And then the security side, that consolidation with the Network Security Hub makes sense. But the real story is confidential computing, extending that T protection down to PostgreSQL databases. That's pretty significant.
It really is. And maybe the final thought for you, the listener, comes from connecting two seemingly different updates we discussed.
Yep.
Think about the new at-cost data transfer in Europe, a pricing policy driven potentially by market pressures or regulations. And then think about the mandatory retirement of HSM Platform 1 keys in Key Vault, a fundamental security policy driven by evolving cryptographic standards.
So cost drivers and security mandates?
Exactly. Both force you to make architectural changes, right? One impacts your immediate operating costs, the other your long-term security and compliance posture. So the question to mull over is, how are these ongoing shifts, both in geopolitical pricing and in fundamental security requirements, influencing how you design your cloud and hybrid architectures for the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Interesting. You have to balance immediate cost optimization against these longer-term, non-negotiable security modernizations.
Yeah, you really do. They're intertwined. And hopefully some of the updates we covered this week give you the tools and the information you need to start tackling both sides of that equation.
A great point to end on. Thanks for breaking all that down.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back next week with more updates.